Yay, Media Group.
A quick note before we dive into today's podcast. If you like what you hear, I would love for you to subscribe to Fueled Wellness and Nutrition, wherever you download your podcast. It would also be incredible if you take a minute to rate and review this podcast. Those things do matter and they really help us.
I'm Molly Kimball. Welcome to Fueled, a wellness and nutrition podcast. I'm a registered dietitian and nutrition journalist with a passion to help people live their strongest, healthiest life possible. In my weekly TV segments and columns, there's a limited amount of time and space to cover everything, but there's so much more to share. This podcast is my opportunity to dive deeper into the topics you want to know about. There's all types of different milestones and markers that we experience throughout our life. For me, I just had a really big one. Actually, as this podcast drops, I just turned 50 last weekend.
Congratulations.
So I am joined by one of my good friends, Ben McLauchlin. We're talking about, what does this mean? What about this? How can we use this time of reflection? And, you know, I've written an article about it that is sort of about almost like celebrating turning 50, because it's not something that I'm not shying away from it or, ooh, I hate the idea of turning 50. To me, it's actually a little bit of a fascinating concept.
Yeah.
It's strange to me, though, that I'm turning 50. So we haven't shied away from it. Ben lives in Dallas, but Ben's in town now because actually, as we're recording this podcast, it's a couple of weeks before my actual birthday. Ben was in town baking a birthday cake for me. Yes. We did for our WGNO segment. So we'll have links to all that fun stuff.
Molly wanted a vanilla birthday cake. She could have any cake in the world in flavor profile. She went with the vanilla, which I appreciate.
It's my favorite. And so we've been, he's in talk for that segment that kind of just got us talking about, the different, anytime. And it was for me a strange thing of how do I want to celebrate? What do I want to do? It feels like such a big deal, but then you can easily put so much pressure on that.
That's right.
So as this podcast drops, I mentioned it's going to be just a few days after my 50th. But right now, as Ben and I are talking, it's about 10 days or so before. Yeah. And so one of the things that what are you going to do for your 50th? The day of, we are going to celebrate. We have some friends and family, just a small group that will have dinner and a beautiful celebration there. But really throughout the year for me is trying some new things and incorporating things that I've never done before, or Brad and I have never done before. And not for any reason, a lot of it. It's just that you always think there's more time.
Yes.
So now is sort of doing that. So that's sort of, one of the big things is it's not just to extend the celebration for a whole year, but it's sort of taking that whole year to do these new experiences. And then, so I roped Ben into doing the segment with me to talk about
Molly. That's right. I came in and baked a cake and now I'm here. And just for some B-roll background, there is a camera on me, which historically we have not had during a podcast.
We haven't.
However, this is used. Hello.
But we always have the request from our social team. Do you have video content for that? And now the answer will be yes.
It's enthralling video. Like I'm sitting here with a baseball cap, a sweatshirt. I may have some flour on my nose.
Upstairs in our study.
I just frosted a cake 5 minutes ago. So, woo.
Okay, so the reason I asked Ben to do this, as long as I've known you, you have like always a sense of not just passive, but really actively pursuing like self-awareness and growth.
I can hear that. I do my best. I try. Whether that be through therapy, relationships, conversations, books that I can read. I almost think I dig into self-awareness to almost a fault at times, if that's even possible to say.
It's probably not for yourself personally, but maybe the people who are closest around you.
Yes.
Who are sort of on the receiving end of
that's right.
Some of that,
Here we go again.
Yeah.
Ben's
it could feel
learned something new.
It could feel that way, especially for someone who's maybe not quite so much that.
Yeah.
But for you, I find that it's what energizes you. It's what you're often in a state of that reflection and growth. And from this experience or this interaction, what can I learn from this? How can I do better moving forward?
That's right.
How can I improve not only yourself, but also whatever the other circumstances are and all.
Yeah.
You recently had a window of time that you kind of had some open time that you almost like a gap year. Some people would talk about.
For sure.
And you weren't passive with it.
I wasn't. And what's interesting about that is that, so I took a year off. It started off because my father was sick. I took care of him. He lived a wonderful life. Talk about milestones, and where you kind of do some life assessment, but he did pass away beginning of the year. So I just took a little break just to do some things that I love, also just to grieve him, to be thankful also for his life force in my life. But I didn't really understand what I had actually done until the end of 2024, because now we're in 2025. I have to remember that. But the end of 2024, I did a quick assessment of like, what have I done this year? And once I had the list, like I immediately sent it to Molly, and I was like, I would only send this to few, because I don't want to look like I'm bragging. But I feel very accomplished. But truthfully, I had no idea that I'd even accomplished so much or done so much with my time, that it was eye-opening to me. But I think that leads into like when you're turning 50, like how do you reflect on the decades before, the years before, your time before, and how it was spent? And then what does that mean for the next part of your time, phase of your life?
I'm glad that we're talking about this too, because I think that we don't, just as a culture, we often don't spend much time in that space of reflection.
Yeah.
There's so many distractions coming at us, in that what we would consider like that quiet space or that still space, we can easily fill it with, things coming through on our phone, whatever technology or other distractions that can really hold us back from having even the smallest bit of reflection, much less really taking kind of a deep dive in that. And I guess for me, it does seem a little indulgent, like, okay, I'm turning 50. Let's talk about reflection for me. Right. But it isn't just that. It's really, I think there's so much of giving ourselves permission to pause and look back at that. What was the catalyst for you to do that list?
Well, transparency. One, it's just always fun to do an inventory.
Right.
And say what happened this year. But also now that I took my sabbatical, I am looking for employment. And I had to figure out, how do I communicate that gap year in my employment with a new potential employee when they interview me and they say, hey, I see you have a gap in your resume. What was that?
Right.
So I really was taking down a list just to see, like, what would I communicate to people?
Right.
How did I spend this time?
And like, for example, you are becoming a master gardener.
That's right. A Texas master gardener, because I do live in Texas, Molly said. And it was like a 3-month intensive program. You had to do about 50 volunteer hours after even going to 3 months of class. So it was intensive, but it was fantastic. Met wonderful people, and I've learned a lot. Still learning. I'm still an intern.
Taking a course in conflict negotiation.
Conflict negotiation is an area I really have to grow in. But yeah, I'm on my last class to finish that graduate certificate.
I think both of those things are perfect examples of the type of thing that someone said, oh, I would love, like a master gardener. Oh, I'd love to take a gardening class. Or, oh, I could really get better at something like, managing conflict better. But many of us don't do the next step of actually doing it.
Yes.
We sort of wish our way through it. Oh, I would love that. Or I wish I could do that, but we don't actually do it. So I think it's really, that list helped you realize all the things you did. You and I did several TV segments together last year. We also had our reprint of our Eat Fit cookbook with our new edition. That's that you had the new recipe contributed to it. So there's a lot that was some big and then some smaller, but all of these were different accomplishments that sort of added to your growth.
And what I also love about it, I'm listing off these activities that can be a bulleted list.
Right.
But what I don't have on there is the time I also spent on myself. Just like I think Molly's even seen it this week with me staying at her house. Like, I will go to bed at 9:00 and say, this is just my boundary, and I just want a downtime of an hour before bed. I'll go to sleep. But during the day, I've also learned to really take care of myself, because I'm a go-go person. Molly is too. But now I'm okay. If I wake up in the morning, it's okay if Ben doesn't jump up and do 300 things in the first 2 hours of my day.
Right.
I'm okay if I have a slower move and it builds up to progress throughout the day. That was not normal before this break.
Right. There's a lot of learning. Think about when Brad and I had the opportunity for his work. They offer a 3-month paid sabbatical, and we took it in 2019. And I was fortunate enough to be able to take that time off also. Mine wasn't paid leave, but I was able to use a blend of unpaid and vacation time. And that 3 months without any other distractions, we traveled, we were out of the country, pretty much all of it, but learning and navigating and completely figuring out how to do new things and different things in completely different cultures. And also seeing what was the common theme of what we were seeking out in each place, even how we spent our downtime. You see now we spend so much of our time outdoors in our backyard, on our porch. And just since we got back after that 5 years ago, we've really converted the backyard to be that place that is welcoming, inviting, and you want to spend your time. Because we realized when we had what felt like all the time in the world, wherever we were, we wanted to be outdoors. We wanted to be in nature. And so why do we have to wait till we're traveling to do that? We can do that here. So the concept of this is for any of y'all listening is taking this moment, and we're using Molly turning 50 as kind of our excuse for talking about this, but thinking about that time of reflection, like Ben has said, is something good to do annually, and using something that can be like a marker, like a birthday. Ben mentioned the death of his father, and there's things that can be whatever these big life changes are, they can be an opportunity to take that assessment. You've talked about an idea of, and so what we'll be talking about today is a little bit of, well, what are some strategies to work through that? Because it might feel uncomfortable. Like, well, I don't really know where to start. Like that's such a vast, most people don't have the opportunity to do at that 3-month sabbatical, or like Ben just did a gap year, to where you really are kind of putting yourself in that place. This is like, okay, what can I do on my drive into work? Or what can I do in a morning walk that maybe is like one of my only periods of quiet time without distractions? And so what we'll be talking about is maybe some things to think through, or questions to kind of prompt you to think through, and some strategies to do it. Yes.
Because when Molly first approached me about the podcast, she was like, let's talk about, and this is not Molly, because Molly is like a bubble of optimism. But Molly was like, she left me a voicemail, and she was just like, let's talk about regrets. And, maybe there's some funny regrets, and then we can do some serious regrets. And I was driving over from Texas to New Orleans with all my baking equipment and whatnot. But when I got here, Molly and I were discussing it. I was like, well, I feel like we can talk about regrets, but I also think we should talk about, our wins, our victories, where were we satisfied or content in some of our decisions that we've made up to a certain point or milestone, if that makes sense, Molly.
And I think too many times we don't give ourselves that permission to do it.
Yeah.
Because we're always, speaking for myself, we're always looking at what's next, what's ahead, what are we working toward? And it can feel, I said the word indulgent earlier, it can feel indulgent, or some people feel, it's easy to feel like, well, I don't really deserve to think back about all my accomplishments, or it feels braggy, even if it's just on your own.
I think it's also hard to find time.
Yeah.
Like, if like you just said, if you want to get out and just take a walk and think through it, your lunch break, jot down some things, even if it is in the car and you're just thinking through stuff, just to find that opportunity to make some time and make it a priority. Because I know that's where I've struggled, is making some of these things that I should do to do some assessment.
Right.
I should making time to do these things, but I don't always prioritize.
Right. Because again,
but I'll say I'll get to it.
Right. So I think it's impressive of all the things that you did get to. So I think let's talk about the regrets first, since we did bring that up.
Yes.
Because I do think the regrets, I try personally to not be haunted by regrets, and I think, I do a good job of that. I recently had interviewed Lauren Haydell, a Flirty Girl, for this podcast, and it was about her journey as she gave up alcohol. And it was a really big transition for her. And one of the things that she said was, I was tired of living with regret and tired of waking up with regret. And so for her, that was one of the big, that was the primary catalyst for her to say, this has got to end, because every day I was waking up with regret for whatever had happened, or, the fuzziness or the fuzzy conversations. And so the, not wanting to live with regret, I think I do a good job of not letting things haunt. There's a few though that I do think about, and I mentioned some are light and some are serious. Which one do you want to start with first?
I'm looking forward to the light one. I want to hear the light regret.
Do you want to do the light one first, or the serious one first?
I'm trying to think through a light regret. I feel like my regrets are so heavy I was even like, what can I even speak up publicly that I work through, or I may have some shame? Because sometimes I feel like there's like shame associated, or even like you said, you may have some regret, but it's not this ghost that haunts you.
I'm here on a job site with Tim, who owns his own electrical contracting business.
3 employees and 2 work trucks.
Tim traded up to Geico Commercial Auto Insurance. We're positively here where he needs us most.
They sure are.
With step-by-step help on all his insurance needs, all for shockingly low rates.
Shockingly low, huh?
Just a little bit of electrician humour. Do you get it?
I got it.
You know, it feels like we have a real connection. All right, I'll stop.
Get a commercial auto insurance quote today at geico.com and see how much you could save. It feels good to Geico.
I feel like a lot of people out there, myself included, it haunts.
It haunts.
If you have a filing cabinet. Like there are some people who can have a life experience and in 10 minutes it is gone.
Yeah.
Unfortunately for me, I remember back to like 5th grade in my filing cabinet.
And so trying to let these go.
Yeah.
I think part of the reason I was even like, hey, let's talk regrets is one, how do we let it go if it is haunting us, if it's stuck in our file cabinet, like Ben said? And then the other is, how can that influence us now for the better?
Yes,
you know,
exactly.
And what can we do differently now with it? So I'll start with the funny.
Okay, come on.
Or the light one. I guess it's not really, it is. Well, so on the sabbatical that I mentioned, one of our stops, we stopped in a whole bunch of towns and cities throughout, and we didn't count it along the way, but at the end of the 3 months, it was like 22 different places, 22 different cities that we had been in and towns and small places, like, you know, places we never heard of. We would meet people and kind of, oh, here's your favorite place. And we would find it, never heard of these places, got ourselves there and experienced it. And being in places without a plan allowed us to really connect with the people around us and learn from them more and kind of use that as our guide. So we ended up in a small coastal town in Portugal, and just beautiful view, beautiful hikes. The like mountains are like, they're like kind of like the Red Rock type mountains that are just like, you know, plummeting down into the Cobalt Sea. It was just like, you'd never seen anything like this. And we're going along one of these longer walks, and we had thought it was maybe going to be like, you know, a 90-minute round trip. We end up going on a loop that we don't realize we've got ourselves on. And, you know, when you think an hour and a half, now it turns into like a 7-hour hike. And as we get out, we realize we still got to work our way all the way back. And it's gorgeous. And so, but we weren't seeing a lot of people, and we were really tired. We hadn't packed enough water or food, you know, so it was one of these that, as gorgeous as it was, and we were enjoying it, we had bit off more than what we were planning for. And so as we were heading back, but we knew we probably still had another 2 or 3 hours till we got back to where we'd parked, we run across this couple. And again, we're in the coastal town of Portugal. It's a French couple. They're probably close to 80. Okay. And they stop and they just, hi, and they start chatting with us. And maybe they heard us talking. They realized we were from the US. It happened to be the 4th of July. And so they acknowledged that, oh, it's a holiday in your country. And then they just start talking to us and sharing a lot. And they were both retired flight attendants for like, you know, one of the French airlines. They lived in France. That was their home base their whole lives. That's where they were from. But there was some sort of a financial incentive, and I don't remember all the details, and someone listening may know more of it, but there was a financial incentive for them to live in Portugal. And so they had bought a home on this coastal, beautiful, rocky area, and they were telling us about this and that they had moved there, and it was sort of like they were like probably 75 when they'd moved there, didn't know anyone, had picked up, moved there, loved it, and they're telling us all about this new life they have here. And we're visiting, and we were standing like kind of on this trail overlooking the sea, and we're the only people around, and they're some of the only people we saw. And then they said, do you want to come back to our house for a drink? And we said, thank you, but we're on our way back. And we declined it because we were tired, and we were kind of just, we didn't have on, you know, you weren't, we were, like I said, it was still super enjoyable, but we were fatigued, and it just had not been what we thought we were getting into. And that is a regret. I think about that, and I'm like, because they were super nice, but there was also something that was a little bit odd about it, and a little bit of odd energy coming off of them. And I wish we would have seen what we were going back to. That's it. That's the regret. And I think, what would that have been? Like, what was there was, I'm sure
Molly,
it was
I have
safe.
300 thoughts right now. And this is, I think, a PG or G-rated podcast. But there may have been an upside down pineapple outside their house.
We wondered more if it was like, would we leave the house? Like, would there, like,
I thought y'all were Hansel and Gretel.
something like this? Yeah. Yeah. Where we Hansel and Gretel? What was it?
I love that is a regret. You did not find out the situation you may have walked into.
Right.
And now you have a regret that you just didn't find out.
Right. I do,
That
because
is funny.
there's so much curiosity. What was going on there? Because there was something that was just a little bit different, and it wasn't going to be straightforward, whatever it was.
Well, knowing you, do you have their contact information?
No,
Can you follow up on this regret?
No, that's the thing. They sort of vanished in the thin
what
air.
happened that day?
Vanished
What
in the
was
thin air.
planned at that house?
Yeah. Hey, we're coming back into Portugal. Vanished in the thin air.
Yeah.
We didn't have their names. We didn't have any contact info, which is, unusual for us. Because
Yes.
So
Well,
that's
I'm going to say I do not have a regret that if your gut was telling you something's off, I think is the language you used. I think it's for the best.
But we also said we could have outrun them.
Whisper that. I think it's for the best that you did not go to that house if something was off.
But we both agreed that we could have outrun them.
Fair enough. Okay.
But still, you never know. So that was the light one. That it's silly, but it is sort of one of those things of like, when you have an experience, why not?
Yeah.
Try it.
Yes.
And that was a lot of how we lived our life, and we still do. And that was one that we didn't. And I think, I wonder what would have been happening over there.
Well, I'm just thankful you're here with us on this podcast today, Molly.
And not Hansel or
to share
Gretel.
this regret. You weren't thrown into an oven.
So I think that's more of like when we have something that, who knows if it could be a cool opportunity. And I think sometimes you just don't even know what you're passing up as you pass up something.
That's
and if you
right.
think about so many of the happenstance conversations that you don't even realize are about to occur, and then you have it, and what does that lead to? The next thing, that stuff that like you had no idea. And when you think back to some of the biggest things that have happened in our life, sometimes it was because of one chance meeting with something.
That's right.
And not that I think it would have turned into something, but I think I always try to be open to whatever's presenting it in front of me.
Yes.
And that was
would
one that I
agree
feel
with
like I wasn't.
Because just so y'all know, Molly and I had an earlier conversation also, because like yesterday, I see her peek out her window. She sees a neighbor on the sidewalk. Molly literally opens her door and starts screaming across the street at her. And then talking to
Cherie.
somebody else, to Cherie. And then today she saw the mailman. They had a wonderful conversation about, and Molly had a vehicle for like 18 years or something. And she finally retired that sweet vessel.
And our mailman
got a
Damon
new-
has been
and-
saying for years, when that car's so old, Molly, when are you going to get a new car? So I said, Damon, you're going to be so proud.
Yes. And so my regret was that Molly opened the door and talked to these people. Because I looked at her yesterday and I was thinking, I look out the window to see if a neighbor's on the sidewalk before I go out of my house so I can let them pass before I get to my car. Whereas Molly was like a kid in a candy store, like, oh, a human, get him. So one of my regrets would have been that you opened that door. I'm just kidding. I have to think through, like, am I missing? We're kind of going with, it can lead, I guess, with the regret conversation, but even what you're saying, like, am I missing opportunities to speak to people and have an engaged conversation with community by not wanting to run into somebody on the sidewalk?
Not having that happenstance conversation. And there's things that, and those people that have been, because I wouldn't say I fling the door open and I'm like shouting at them, but it sort of happened
A
twice.
bullhorn was in her hand.
It wasn't,
From my
but it
point
did
of view.
happen twice.
And the thing is, and let's be clear here, we understand the introverts and the extroverts in the world and the borderline in the world. I think they have a new one even that they've named. I don't remember what it is though, Molly.
I don't consider myself an extrovert because I need so much downtime
To recharge.
But I think that those people that I did fling the door open and shout out to, and this was literally, I heard Damon's footsteps putting the mail in the mailbox.
Yeah.
And Vin sees me and
She
said,
ran.
oh, I hope that's Damon. Like a little kid on the bus.
It was fun.
But I also, it's selfish really, because I like the energy that they give back.
Oh yeah, no, it was very positive
Yeah.
interaction. They were not annoyed.
Yeah.
They were just as happy to see you.
Yeah. And there's something there's like a little update or a little exchange. The one that's probably more significant, and this is one that it doesn't haunt me though, but I try to think, what can I do differently moving forward so that it doesn't happen again? And this is related to my mom, and so my mom, I've shared before on this podcast, but back in 2012, she had a really big procedure. 2 feet of her aorta was replaced, and she had just a lot of complications. She ended up losing the use of her legs, her whole lower body. She couldn't move it. And she became just physically dependent on my stepdad and others and all of us. And her nature before, she was always, as much as Ben and I loved doing and going, I mean, she was like, take that times like 10. And she was a hyper need to be in control of things. And, Brad used to say, this is like a science experiment to put someone like your mom who's so, has such a heightened need for control, to have her in a space where she doesn't. And it was horrible. Like, it was just a really terrible few years with that. I mean, to not be able to walk, to have all this stuff, it was just horrible. And she did a lot that, she got back into, once she was finally back home, she was in the hospital for a year. Once she got back home, they started doing more of the things like going back to their church every Sunday and their Sunday school group. And she did social things with her friends. But of course, everything was different. There was just, when you're in a wheelchair and you're having to be driven, like there's just so much that's different for someone who used to be so independent.
Yes.
And she, for the most part, had a good attitude about it. Decent, I would say. And then towards the end, she was kind of done. But throughout it, this is the regret that I have, is when she would be upset. And sometimes, she would just cry and just like down in it and feeling like, understandably really sorry for herself. And this is horrible. And had I known this, I would have never done this in the first place. And just really going into really dark places as she's experiencing this sadness of where she is. And it would just at times get really dark. And instead of just letting her be there and sit there and be with her while she was there, I would try to pick it up. And, not these words, but sort of but look on the bright side.
No, I hear that.
You're still able to do these things with your friends, these things with your church, these things with us. You're still here for this. And all of those things were true, but it was negating, I think, this whole thing just really sucks horribly. And I think I didn't allow her to sink into that like I wish I would have.
That's right.
And I think that's a regret.
I hear you on that. And I think through what you're saying, because, even, we're not getting into the parental care later in life, but, my dad had similar moments, but also, and I would say I responded similar to you as far as let's look at, some of the optimism in the situation and some of the blessings, quote unquote, that exist here. But I guess what I struggle with is at what point I'm all for being in the moment and feeling the feelings. And even what we're talking about here, taking that time and space to sit in it. But at what point do we also help them climb out of it?
Right.
So it's that tension where so I understand your regret.
Yeah.
But then I think it's also like, I don't think what you did was incorrect, but I think what I'm hearing you say is that you would have just appreciated if you had given your mom a little more time to sit in that.
Right.
But then maybe you could come in and help bring her out or show her, in a mirror, the positives and what to be thankful for, if that's what your approach was.
And I think that's exactly. And so now I try, just when someone is in that space, to listen.
Yes.
To maybe offer some, but really just listen. And I'm sorry, that really stinks. That
Sometimes
really
that's
sucks.
all people need to hear.
Yeah. And that doesn't mean that you're pulling that person along or you're on their track to negative town with them. And I think that was my feeling with her was, I don't want that to go into negative space, but how can it not? It's a horrible thing. And so really trying to not only try to lift up and try to just be where the people who are closest to me are and just be quiet if they needed to be, or just be with them in it and not try to, well, let's look on the bright side.
Yes.
At least not right away.
Yeah. No, I hear that. You were like, let's sit in the reality. This is a real, this is what's happening.
So that was one that when I look back, I have I feel really good about the love and the care, and knowing that she, knowing how all of that was in those last years, I don't have regrets on how I handled that. And I'm really glad, because we went up there a lot. We were very present. And I never wanted to look back and say, I wish that I would have done more. But that is one element that you just can't change.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll find myself in other conversations with people and it kind of brings me back to that. And
Yeah.
I'll think, oh, okay. And it'll remind me like, just be quiet or just listen and
That's
say,
right.
that sucks, you know?
Yeah. Make it a teachable moment.
Yeah.
You know, like some of the biggest quotes around regret, because I did a quick Google search before we got on here. But some of the quotes that I've seen about regret are how regrets lead to education. They lead to empowerment. They lead to learning if you allow yourself to learn from that experience of something you may regret. Okay, what can I glean from this? And now how can I apply it moving forward? And it sounds like that's what you did.
And I don't
Or
think
are
I
doing.
always do it,
Yeah,
but trying to
yeah.
have that awareness,
Yes.
you know?
And an awareness you didn't have before if you hadn't been in that situation.
Right.
Now you can
Right.
look back on it and say it's a regret, but it's sharpened me to where I have a little more sensitivity if someone's in that headspace.
If think on paper, I would have said that I would have handled it like I think I want to handle it.
Yeah.
I would have thought that I would have done that, but realizing that my nature when you're in it can be to try to lift it.
Yes.
When you Googled and regret, you were also looking at the opposite of regret, and you some of the things were peace and satisfaction
That's
and contentment.
Right. That's right.
So we were also talking about, as we talk about regrets, what are, on the flip side, what are things that bring us that sense of peace or that sense of satisfaction, and sort of just like kind of taking that inventory and allowing ourselves to take that time of reflection. I think so many times we don't really stop and think either what is bringing me peace or what am I proud of or what am
I
I?
would agree.
Yeah.
It's a hard question for me to answer.
Yeah.
Like I know for me, I probably equate peace for the rate at which my brain is always functioning and doing things and solving the world's issues and problems. Peace for me is when I'm in the kitchen baking. My brain completely wipes out and I'm only focused in the joy of that task and making whatever baked good I'm making, which is why like I probably get in the kitchen, even there's sabbatical 2 or 3 times a week and just make something, some random recipe I saw online that came across my page. And I'm just like, I'm going to make that. But when I get in that space, that is where contentment and peace come to me, which is why I bake as much as I do.
I keep pressing Ben to open a bakery,
Oh, gosh.
a low carb bakery.
Well, it would bring peace.
But I wonder if it would be taking something that brings you such peace and adding a layer
of stress
to
let's
it.
be honest.
Right. Because it is what brings you such peace because there's no pressure on the back end of it.
Yeah, I'm just there having fun.
Yes.
And it's art, it's art to me. It's creating something that people can enjoy and
Yeah.
that kind of thing. But how do you find peace, or what is peace or that contentment in life and just being like, life is good. And,
For me, being in a space that is, I love being outside. I love being in the space of nature, and it can be outside, in the water, in the ocean. It can be hiking. It can be any of these things that, based in a place like New Orleans, you typically have to travel for. But just like I was saying during our sabbatical, we realized that, we're staying in Airbnbs a lot. And what was important to us was that there was an outdoor space. And we thought, this is simple. And these are other people's houses. Like we
Yeah.
could do this ourselves. And so for me, I think what brings a sense of peace is not feeling rushed or
Okay.
not feeling like I have something, a deadline or something, a place to be. Because even if it's something really enjoyable, having to be somewhere at a certain time
Yes.
it feels like you're on the clock,
Yeah.
And so I think for me, being with peace is having, whether it's with nature, I also love the process of creating.
Yes.
And that brings me a lot of peace. And so I'm really fortunate that my work has so much creativity.
Yes.
You
It
know,
suits you well.
It suits me really well. And so I think I really enjoy the different aspects of the work that I do, because with the stuff like this, the podcast or the TV segments or writing, there's constant content creation there. Sometimes though, you also are on that time clock.
Yeah.
So it can take a little bit of that out of it because you are on a deadline for that. But I love the process of that. And then with work, with Eat Fit under the, Ochsner Health System, there's the growth we've had there and the having our team is so, they're like all entrepreneurs in their own spaces.
Yes.
And so being able to work with them and to have had this idea and to now see it grow in their hands, that's also that creation and that creativity. And so the fact that that is also my work is really cool.
Yeah.
So I think even though it's work, it definitely brings me peace, and it brings me a lot of, when we look at the opposite of regret being peace or satisfaction, it brings me a lot of satisfaction when I stop and reflect on it. But a lot of times I'm looking ahead to what the next things are. What are we creating next, and what are our next steps? And with our team, though, we've really tried, the leaders that I have over each of our lifestyle nutrition team and our Eat Fit team, Brittany and Lauren, we really work with the others on our team to like have that recap of here's all the progress that we've made. Because sometimes it can feel like a grind in the middle of it, and you feel like you're spinning your wheels, you're putting all this effort out. But then when we take a step back and go, wow, like Alcohol Free for 40 this year is going to be our 10th annual,
which is
Alcohol Free for 40.
Yes.
And Eat Fit's been around now. We're in our 12th year of Eat Fit.
Wild.
Yeah. And so those things of like, wow, when you start something, and there's so many things that you see a nonprofit maybe start, but then it doesn't have the staying power or the infrastructure or the financial support to do that. And so, so all of those things I think are things that bring me peace. And then the people that are key in my life. I mean, you're one of them, Brad, of course, Amy, people that when you're with them, you don't even have to think about, it doesn't matter what anything looks like or what you're acting like or anything, like there's no worries about what is coming across to that person.
Yes.
You can just be.
Yes. And those people are very valuable.
Very valuable.
In your life.
Yes.
In my opinion. And even what I'm hearing from this, because, we talked about regrets, but when you're even looking back at your regrets, like you're also taking an inventory. And again, what we talked about, like with regrets, on where do you find peace too? And also like what were some of your accomplishments in that time period where you're looking again at a year, you're looking at a couple of decades, which is what you're kind of doing, Molly, right now, by looking at 50. And then of course the people who walked along with you, which is what you're also talking about, that gave you that safe space to be in situations where you may have a regret in the future, but in the future you're able to talk about that regret,
right? Hopefully
work through it. If you need to work through the regret, even like with you say it doesn't really have a ghost where it's lingering or haunting.
I try not to. Yeah. And I think the people that you're saying, kind of that safe space, it's people that we can fully be ourselves with. And they also accept us for, I think about those that we just talked about, you and Brad and Amy and, those on our team with Eat Fit and our lifestyle nutrition, is like, they know me so well and y'all know me so well. And there's the flaws there, but there's love and there's respect in spite of that. And also working with, like, we all have different flaws and we all have different strengths, and we all have different things that are going to kind of be those things that propel us and those things that hold us back. And so when you have these people that love you unconditionally, in spite of that, and then are there to help support where they know you're going to need that support, and they also know that you're going to do that for them. Like, to me, that's,
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. It's invaluable in life.
And so I think also as we've got the 50, it's okay. How do we do more of that? And how do we find that time for that reflection? You have a good idea that you shared as far as how to remind yourself, because things can happen so quickly and we can lose track of, when someone thinks back to, well, what did I do over this past year?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I was talking to a friend who had read somewhere some kind of activity and it was mainly focused on the new year. And like, in order to focus on what you want to accomplish, say in 2025, you do have to look at 2024 and say, well, what did happen in 2024? And did I do what I wanted to do in 2024? And you take that inventory and then you decide, okay, you can see those wins, but then you can also see like, where do I need to pick the pieces back up and start on that again? But one way they were suggesting is, if you can't think through or help to guide your thought process, go to your camera roll on your phone. Go to whatever social media, if you happen to be active on social media with your stories or whatever. Go through that. Do a little inventory to remind yourself of where you've been, what you've done, even the little things. If it was that you weeded your garden, you wanted to share that with the world,
Or grew a pretty flower.
or
Right.
grew a pretty flower,
Right.
and you have a picture of that flower,
Right.
like I grew this,
Right.
this year, and that's what I wanted to do and accomplish. Is for Texas, I wanted to successfully grow tomatoes in 2024. It's very difficult in our zone and the heat of Texas, which is why I even wanted to become a master gardener, was to learn and understand that climate. Because I grew up in Alabama, I moved from New Orleans to Dallas. Very different climates from like the desert of Texas,
Right.
in my opinion. And I finally got cherry tomatoes to grow through July.
And they're
now
on your
it was
phone.
an easier summer. It was an easier summer, not as hot as normal for us, but I still was able to manage these tomatoes and get them through, which was my goal. Could I make a summer and actually have some cherry tomatoes that I can eat in September?
And most of us now are photographing these moments. We see it all the time. I mean, we see it all ages, all people. There's the cute little puppy that we've befriended, or the little neighborhood cat. People's phones come out. Lucky, our little neighborhood community duck. When people see her, their phones immediately come out.
That's right.
Her babies. So what Ben's saying is scroll back through that camera roll, because there's guaranteed to be things, unless you're the anomaly that isn't taking pictures of a lot of the stuff you see. It's going to be reminders of good meals you had, of people you spent time with, of maybe cool things, pretty things you saw. It could have been art or flowers or something that you just passed by. It could be that house that you saw that you love the way their shutters look or the paint colors of it, and you snapped a photo of it. And that might remind you of that walk you took with someone. There's just all different things that are buried on our camera roll that can remind us of what we did and how we spent our time.
That's right.
Have you ever gone through, we did it for this past year. I went through, and all the ones that I thought, wow, these are really good pictures, they just live on our phones.
It is so sad to me.
So I created an album for myself in my phone. You do your albums, that is to print. And so I add now, if there's a photo that I'm like, ooh, that's a printer, I'll put it in there. And then, twice a year or so, I'll actually send them out to get them printed.
Yes.
And then actually put them in a frame that you can see. Right.
Yes.
So
I've got the
old-fashioned.
same list.
Yeah.
Because, I used to be the one who loved to get film developed. And so it does make me sad that my memories are not as printed or available to me without going to a little device.
Right.
That I'm just not seeing them every day of walking around my home.
So our takeaway is, if you're having a hard time,
What is our takeaway?
Thinking of, we got a lot of them. If you're having a hard time, even first of all, giving yourself that time and that permission to reflect. And again, for me, it's turning 50. For others, there can be big milestones. I mean, I mentioned Lauren with our lifestyle nutrition. She just had her first baby right before Christmas. And so there's a lot of big milestones there. And so it could be a new relationship, a new marriage. There's just so much that can be all types of things. And so whatever is that, use that as your quote excuse for that time to reflect, but you don't even need that. If you've got if you're, instead of maybe listening to whatever's filling your space as you're driving, maybe turn some of that volume down and just let your thoughts go and do some of that reflection. And then if you need that support, go through that camera roll. Yeah. And then it's going to remind you, oh yeah, like we did, it might be a activity or something you made with your kids or something like that. Oh yeah, I forgot we did that, And
also if you're going through that camera roll and you realize that, wow, I'm not really doing much of what it is I think I maybe should be doing. I don't know. But it's a way to also just kind of have that reality check of, okay, maybe I am bed rotting, and I'm not against bed rotting. Let's be clear here. But I may be bed rotting on my phone and not as engaged in the world as maybe I really want to be.
Right.
So that I don't regret that. What can I do in the next year after, even in the next year? If you're just looking at this during the middle of your year.
Right.
When I do that assessment, what can I do to change that if you want to?
So giving ourselves permission to reflect, giving ourselves permission to be aware of our accomplishments, but also proud of our accomplishments. I think that's another one that we often don't. And then how, when we're doing this reflection, and if there are things that we wish we would have handled differently or done differently, how can we resolve that? How can we make peace so it doesn't stay in our file cabinet, like Ben said? Sometimes we get the opportunity to do a redo, and that's beautiful. I won't get into the details, but I was just telling Ben, a decision that we had made that, gosh, it just didn't go so well. And I was wishing we had the chance to have a redo. And then I did. And I was like, oh, wow. And it turned out so well. And I was like, but we often don't get the chance for a redo.
Right.
But if you do, try to take it. And if not, how can you reconcile or make peace with what we do have? I think I think for me, that's a big thing, is giving ourselves permission to pause and take inventory and go, wow, look at what we've done so far.
I agree with that. And I think even when I'm hearing you say, Molly, which I don't always practice, is if there is something that comes up in our assessment of inventory that is a regret, we shouldn't always punish ourselves or see it as negative. Does that make sense, Molly? Because like even what I'm saying, like I think the language you did use was a ghost. I like that you said that. It wasn't a ghost that haunts you. Like I feel like people, when we hear the word regret, which is why I probably had a reaction to this podcast, I'm like, this sounds like the worst podcast. Like I'm just going to go through my laundry list of regrets to the world. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like that is the way I see it.
Because they're deep.
But and they may not be deep to like you if I shared it, but it's normally a regret is very personal, I feel like.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong. And
No,
for me,
so.
they're very personal.
Yeah.
And they normally have like a deep meaning, or they feel like they have a depth to them with how a regret happened for me. So I guess what I'm trying to say with this is that from this podcast and this discussion, even talking to you before, and the way you even approach it, like a regret doesn't have to be a negative thing. It can be a learning situation to say, can I do a redo? Or is it something I learned from, like with your mom, that if someone else is in that situation and complaining about circumstance, you will give them some time to sit in it. And you learn that instead of just saying, oh, I really failed. And I'm like, what can I do moving forward and learn from this?
Right. I missed that opportunity.
Yeah.
But I've got others moving forward.
And I love that.
Right.
Because I feel like a lot of regrets are ghosts. I know they are for me. So it is good to know, okay, well, what can I change? And then what can I just learn from? And hopefully that will calm some of those regret voices.
So yeah, for me, the kind of the reason or the catalyst for this reflection that we're talking about, the turn in 50, in the article that I wrote for the paper just last week on the same thing, talking about my dad and what about who's shaped me and who's had this influence. Yes. My dad, actually going back to me flinging the door open and talking to people, my dad always has very meaningful conversations with people. And he's not just shooting the breeze. Hey, how are you doing? Oh, it's nice weather outside. He's going to talk to them and he's going to know what's going on with them or what's going on with them personally. And he's going to ask them these questions and he's going to care and he listens and then he follows up and he's going to ask them later how that's going. So my dad, I've watched him my entire life have these connections with people that has a greater depth and meaning than a lot of just the surface interactions that we have with people, just the encounters that we have. And it's not the usual, but I think that that's a lot of what I grew up with kind of as that model. And my mom was like that a lot too. She would ask people things and I'd be horrified. I can't believe she's asking this. And then they would tell her. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So I think what you're seeing, I think I got it kind of like from both. And my mom had just an insane amount of creativity. Yeah. She could make or do or figure out anything. And when I look at things that she painted or things that she created, I mean, I don't think I can do those things, but I think that the creativity I do have, I credit her for. And then both of them for just their openness and their, with each other, with me, with other people, with strangers. And so kind of taking an assessment, my stepmom, what I put in the article about that is my stepmom, Pat, and you and I have talked about this too, just while you've been staying with us these few days, something happens and she just, no matter what the situation is, she's usually going to end up laughing.
Yeah.
Sometimes she may have tears first, but then she's going to end up laughing about it, And so she can take whatever is that maybe pressure cooker situation and she's going to take you out of it, but in a good way.
That's a gift.
But not rose-colored glasses, I mean, she's not afraid to let those emotions out. If something's terrible, she's going to cry. She's going to express it. But she can really, she just will die laughing about stuff. And so that was, growing up with that as a model, those are things that I just, I think those are the core influences that shaped me that I'm really grateful for too.
Yes, exactly. And that's part of the assessment, I feel like, when you are looking at your timeline of life and, again, those pivotal points or those pivotal influences, and the people that you've run into along that has somewhat shaped your path or your journey or even the direction your life went in. Like, I think it's important to take that inventory too of those people, you know?
And when we can, let them know.
Yes. No, I think it's very important
Yeah.
that people know the impact. Like, that would be a regret.
Yes.
Like my history teacher in high school. And like we even would hang out on Sundays and I would just go sit with her and eat oatmeal cookies and talk about life. She was an amazing mentor to me. I'm going to sound a little nerdy here. It was my senior year of high school. I would eat lunch with her every day. I'd just stay in her room and go down and eat in her little homeroom or her desk and have lunch with her and we chat. She was, and forgive me, Mama Noche, that's what she went by. But she taught Spanish and history to me. But she was, I feel like she was over 70 as a teacher. I didn't really do age well.
Right. Everybody seemed like they could have
a
been
little
over,
older.
Yeah.
She may have been in her 60s, but she was definitely over 60. But she was just this wonderful person in my life that I really felt like guided me in education. But also today, like I know history better than my peers, I feel like. But it is because of her and her influence on me to understand how important it is to learn from history, kind of what we're talking about. Look at the years before, take that assessment, learn from it, and apply it to the future.
Were you able to tell her how much of an impact she had?
That's the point. I wasn't able to. She had kind of a freakish death, just a quick medical emergency, and then she was gone from us. And that is a regret I have. I never was able to sit with her again and just tell her. Now, I do feel like I thanked her along the way,
right?
Because that's kind of the
like you feel like she probably knew.
She knew it,
but it's nice to say it so specifically.
But I feel like later in life, I could have approached her.
She knew it, and she knew it at the time. But then for us, selfishly, it also helps us feel better to know that we've communicated it that way. Yeah,
even especially after they leave.
Yeah,
here.
Yeah, even if we have a hunch they knew.
Yes.
It's selfish for us that we want to be able to have said it.
Yeah.
And just confirm that.
That's right. Yeah. So Molly, tell me more about what you're going to do for your 50th year. Cause you mentioned that you're not going to do you're going to have a small party and not like the big 50th and then you move on in life, but you have little activities planned for your 50th year. So what does that look like? Give me some ideas.
The biggest one, and this is sort of what I consider, I'm just over the moon excited about this one, is swimming with whales.
That's amazing.
My understanding is there's only one place, and if there's more than one, there's not many more than one area of the world that you can do this for a whole bunch of different reasons. And that's in the same place that we've gone for Christmas. And it's the island called Moorea. And so it's not just that island, but it's that area, that region in French Polynesia. It's about, I kind of describe it as being, it's not exactly this, but like 8 hours south of LA. Okay. And the nearest big landmass is New Zealand. It's like a 5-hour flight to New Zealand. So it's really kind of in the South Pacific. And so the water is water that's warm enough to get into. The sharks in that area are not predatory. You can swim, and if you see a shark, it's okay. And they're also very aware of the boundaries with the whales. And so there's a lot of rules. You're only on the surface. You're not able to free dive down with them.
Okay. Are you snorkeling?
Yeah, you snorkel and you're on the surface, and you're in the water. And my understanding is there's so many whales in the space, and that if they're comfortable, they're coming by you and they're coming near you. So you're not going after them or chasing them or any of this. And I know that people may have different opinions about swimming with whales. So if that's the case, that's the case. But I think it's going to be, one of the people that I was talking with who has done it, she said that she just immediately started crying. Like it was such a, they're so massive and beautiful and peaceful. And she was, it was just such an experience that was like nothing she'd ever had before. And I thought, it's neat enough to see if you have the opportunity to go to a place where you can see the whales coming up above the water and you just see the beauty and just how magnificent they are. That the idea to be submerged in there and be in their world with them for just that short bit of time, I think would be really cool. So we're doing that, fingers crossed that we have the flight, we have everything booked. And so hopefully it all works. You know, you never know if things will change and we're not able to do it, but it's as of now, what we've got planned.
Good. Well, it sounds amazing.
September swimming with the whales. And then the other things that are sort of, you know, they're not quite as big, but things that we just have never done. And, you know, why not? And so we'll be going to London for a work trip. And then some people said, hey, would y'all want to go to Scotland for a few days after? Well, yeah, sure.
Yes.
You know, we hadn't been before. And if you're already there and that far. And then locally are some of our parks, going to Zion, going to Bryce and, you know, the area of Utah.
Locally, meaning in the United States of America.
Right.
Not in even the state of Louisiana.
Right. So, but things that, you know, we haven't done that. And so, you know, given that a try, and there's other big ideas. The biggest is the swimming with the whales, which, you know, seems like we've got that happening. And I still like it because it's one of those things that I'm so excited about. There's always that, like, what if it doesn't happen? And, you know, there's always that chance, but I hope that it does. And as of now, we've got it all booked. And my best friend Amy is going to come with us because she's also turning 50 this year. So Amy is going to come with Brad and I, and we'll be swimming with the whale. So that, and then just along the way, other things that are, if we've never done it, but it's still possible, but you don't do it for whatever reason, whether it's time or effort or how to figure it out, trying to do more of that, not just for 50, but using that as a catalyst and beyond, you know?
No, I love this. I was actually considering a 50th bash because mine's coming up in a year or two. And now I'm reassessing that. Like if I need, or reevaluating it, if I need to maybe not put money towards the bash, but towards more of a bucket list of things I haven't done yet that I want to do.
It also becomes, it's almost like a wedding, like a slippery slope of who all do you invite? Because that could get really big.
It can.
And so we entertained that for a brief moment and then decided, you know, let's, like you said, that's not easy or inexpensive to do. So let's put that towards these other things that are these experiences that would be.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds great, Molly. It's going to be fun.
All right. So thank you, Ben, for
thank you
joining me. I wasn't really sure what shape we were going to talk about, you know, what shape the episode would take.
Historically, we have talked to baking and gluten-free baking and different kind of flours and sugar replacements. So this is a bit of a different podcast for us.
It's different for the podcast, but not for different for our usual conversations.
Yes, outside of a public arena. We talk this way.
Right.
But we normally talk more of our hobbies.
Right.
Baking and the better for you options.
Yes.
So this is different. I like it.
Yeah. It's something that I was hoping to cover for this episode, and doing it solo felt really intimidating. So thanks for walking me through this.
Thank you for letting me join.